Superheroes are supposed to be the best humanity has to offer, but even they are not immune to making the wrong decision here and there, because just like my hero Hannah Montana said, nobody's perfect. Superman once destroyed an entire neighborhood consciously without warning the residents, but he did it for a reason. This is one of those things that is so bonkers you have to laugh. In Action Comics 8 from 1939, yes, we are going that far back. In this comic, Superman is fighting crime in an underprivileged neighborhood. While he is there, he sees that the neighborhood is just overrun with criminals and bad things. These three boys from the neighborhood are saying to him like, "Wow, I want to be you someday," and Superman says, "It's not entirely your fault that you're delinquents, it's your poor living conditions. If there was only some way I could remedy it." What is Superman left to do? Start social programs? Get donations together for those in the neighborhood? Use political pull to get the government to help? No, those would take too long. The best course of action here to get immediate results is to destroy the whole neighborhood with no warning. He literally sees in a newspaper that a cyclone destroyed another town, and so the government started helping, and he was like, "That's perfect, I'm going to ruin everybody's day." Without telling anybody to get out of there, Superman just starts tearing buildings down. He is acting like a natural disaster. People are running out of their homes screaming. The government, the army shows up and trying to get him to stop. He only leaves when the area is completely destroyed. Early comics were a different breed. Listen, I can say all I want about this wild choice on Superman's part, but he did get results. Eventually, the neighborhood is full of better housing, but it presumably took a while. Sorry, just a little bonus here with Superman, a 10.5 if you will. Superman once got a mullet. He was wrong for that. I don't care if it was the 90s. Anyway, we cannot deny that Stark Industries was a weapons company that Tony Stark did run when it was making weapons. We can't deny that these weapons caused large-scale destruction, but the good news is Tony eventually realized that this was wrong and switched over to what Stark Industries is producing now. Did the new Stark Industries also cause problems? Of course, both in the comics and the films, but thankfully not weapons of mass destruction problems anymore. That's all I'm gonna say about this one, because Tony was in the wrong doing that, but he realized and grew as a person, and we love that for him. Scott Summers has done some things he's not proud of, like, for example, leaving his wife and child to get back with his ex-dead ex-girlfriend. Jean Grey and Scott Summers were the it couple of the X-Men, then Jean died and Cyclops mourned and moved on with an exact replica of her, Madeline Pryor. Literally, exact replica. She was a clone of Jean. Her and Scott, they fall in love and then they have a child. Scott is showing some signs that he's not like super happy in the marriage, but he sticks by his wife until his ex-girlfriend comes back from the dead. When he hears of that, he leaves Madeline and his young son to go see Jean. Horrible look for Mr. Scott Summers, sir, you should have not done that. There was even a panel with Madeline looking sadly at a picture of Scott holding their baby, and it is so heartbreaking. Scott did eventually try to call Madeline, but by that point she was over him and changed her number. Mr. Fantastic wasn't always a stellar husband. Is he perfect today? No, but he is a significantly better version of himself than the earlier version of himself. The early Reed Richards hated women. He would constantly belittle Susan and speak to her rudely, tell her wives should be kissed, not heard, asking her to stop talking like all the time. Though the attitudes he was showing were common for the time, that doesn't mean it was right, and it does mean that the comics aged like milk and are a stain on the character's history. He also at one point was trying to rile up a mind-controlled evil Susan, and then to try and snap her out of the mindset, he decided to make contact with her face using his hand. Whether or not the situation called for that kind of thing is up for debate, but for sure that panel has made him look bad. Hank Pym was once a beloved character, and then he laid hands on his wife too and was never really seen the same. He was apparently not completely himself when he did it, that was retconned later on, but he did it and it's not a good look, and he has shown aggression in the past which made it, again, look it all even worse. The actions did have repercussions on the character's life, like getting kicked off the Avengers and getting divorced and having this brought up all the time. But it was wrong. Janet did not deserve it. Pym also created a fake threat to make himself seem more like a hero. He made a robot with a secret failsafe only he knew so that it would attack the Avengers mansion, then when he came in to defeat the unbeatable robot, the Avengers would see him as a hero, but that's not what happened. He couldn't defeat the robot, but you know who did? Janet. Then she divorced him. Girl boss. The reason she was even hurt by him in the first place was because she opposed this whole robot plan. Mr. Fantastic, or Reed Richards, is known for being very intelligent but not always emotionally intelligent. That's hurt the people close to him a few times over the years. Like that time when he masked his son's mutant gene that never was actually there, so he couldn't go to Krakoa like the son wanted. Franklin Richards was considered one of the most powerful mutants in the world. Unsurprisingly, that meant that mutants wanted him on Krakoa full-time to be around other mutants and learn from other mutants. But he was still a kid. His parents still had a say over what he did and did not do. And they believed that Franklin should stay with them full-time. He was just a teenager. Plus, at this point in the timeline, Franklin had actually lost his powers and his dad was trying to figure out why. So they wanted to keep Franklin home for that super medical reason as well. Mr. Fantastic predicted that the X-Men were going to show up eventually to try and convince or forcefully take Franklin to Krakoa, so he invented a device to mask the mutant gene in Franklin so he would not be accepted by the Krakoa portals. When Franklin finds out his dad technically modified him without him knowing, it's a heartbreaking moment for both. The real kicker here, Reed didn't even need to do all that. Franklin was never a mutant anyway. All that harm done to this father-son relationship for absolutely nothing. The Invisible Woman does call Mr. Fantastic out though for trying to mask his son's mutant gene, literally stating to him that what he did was wrong. There's a good balance there. Dr. Hank McCoy has done a lot of good. He also created a dangerous tech that immobilized a villain so that he wouldn't be hurt by another mutant team, because if he's not a threat, then they have no justifiable reason to cause that death. But the real reason Beast did it is because this villain happened to be the son of a country's leader, and Beast wanted that country to be indebted to Krakoa. The country developed a plant-based biotech that could help cure people and make the average human more powerful. Krakoa was making its money and had agreements with countries around the world because they were the only place that had special plants to cure serious illness, so this plant tech was looking like major competition. To preserve Krakoa's export, Beast lobotomized the villain using their tech. Brutal all around. This plan is already the perfect shade of morally gray, but then of course it goes wrong and it gets worse. The virus, the dangerous plant biotech, was in fact very dangerous and went haywire, infecting people all over that country and causing serious damage. It was an accident on Beast's end, but it was a costly accident that should have resulted in some sort of jail time. Tony once cloned Thor, and many regard it to be his biggest mistake. The reason he cloned Thor was to use him while he was fighting Captain America. It was when they were fighting about the Hero Registration Act stuff. Tony wanted to add even more edge to the cloned god, somehow try to make a god more formidable of a foe. To do that, he added Stark Tech Cybernetics. This Thor clone is called Ragnarok. Obviously, the clone is a little on the unstable side, and he starts going around trying and succeeding in putting an end to other superheroes. That was not what Tony wanted at all, but Tony, why were you cloning your friend and messing with the DNA of a god? Personally, I would not have done that or recommend doing that. Creating deranged Thor also made his already bad relationship with Captain America worse, and then when the real Thor shows up again, he isn't happy with Tony either. Ragnarok was eventually taken out by Storm and Hercules using the deranged clone god's own fancy hammer, but then he came back from the dead anyway in the end and joined the Dark Avengers. Tony Stark created a cool character, but a massive problem with that one. Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, lost it at one point. He suffered a mental break, and then the Green Lantern Corps suffered for it. Hal Jordan was just trying to visit his hometown, Coast City, but when he got there, it was gone, destroyed. This caused his brain to break, and he wanted revenge and also to fix the city. He recreated the entire city and revived the residents, which is not allowed, but in his grief he did not care. Then for his revenge, he took out Sinestro and the Guardians, the people who run the Green Lantern Corps, the ones who are trying to bring order to the universe. Hal Jordan became Parallax and then started rampaging across the universe, generally being a menace and terror. Eventually he was stopped, and it was revealed later that the reason he acted so terribly as Parallax was because he was actually possessed by Parallax, a demonic parasite. Wanda causing the death of almost all mutants was not exactly her shining moment. She was dealing with a lot. The whole thing with her not kids and her brother and her father figure and her teammates and her husband. A mental break was to be expected, but that doesn't excuse wiping out an entire genre of people, lots of whom don't even know you personally. She also took out a couple Avengers during this period, including Vision, Ant-Man, and Hawkeye big thumbs down all around. The mutant population was nearing 1 million, and by the time Wanda finished her sentence, that number dropped to around maybe 10 to 15% of what it once was. Wanda has a bigger B count than some villains. Wanda may have said no more mutants, but that doesn't mean she meant that she wanted to steal the life of every mutant. Instead, it was intended to be like a hex spell thing to remove mutant abilities. The problem here was that lots of mutants' lives are attached to their powers, so when you take the power away, you take the life away. Others just pass kind of from aftershocks and stuff like that. It was bad, and is generally referred to as M-Day. The few mutants that did survive, they had to now figure out how to live in a powerless body. Thankfully, everything did go back to as normal as possible. Lots of mutants were revived, and pretty much everyone got their powers back in a variety of different ways. Wanda was also able to patch up her relationships with the Avengers and the mutants, but it was tough, and not everyone trusts her to this day.
Coming in at number 10 today is Aquaman versus the Joker. Did you know that even underwater, Aquaman was defeated by the Joker? No, not one-on-one, mind you. Aquaman would crush the Joker in a fistfight, but this is the Joker. Fistfights aren't really his thing anyways. In Legends of the DC Universe number 26 and 27, Joker heads to Atlantis to get away from Batman. Now, even though Aquaman knows exactly what the Joker is up to, the Joker is still able to somehow convince enough of the people of Atlantis that he is the king of the surface world and that he can help them with finding a cure for their infected fish. He even manages to get a scientist to fall in love with him. It is absolutely ridiculous. But it happened. Aquaman's own people turned on him because of the Joker. It's crazy. Number 9, Raven versus the Joker. Yes, it's another Joker one, I'm sorry, not really. In the Titans East special, the Joker teams up with Bizarro to help him kidnap some random famous singer. When the Teen Titans show up to save her, the Joker sends Bizarro after Starfire, Cyborg, and Wonder Girl while he stays and holds the hostage, leaving only Kid Flash, Robin, Beast Boy, and Raven to face the Joker alone. This is 4 heroes on one relatively weak guy, the Joker, and it should be an easy win. But still, while Kid Flash is able to snatch the Joker's weapon away, turns out that was actually a bomb, which Wally tries to run to a safe location, but it goes off, incapacitating Kid Flash. Then it's Raven's turn. Now, being as awesome as she is, she makes the Joker's worst nightmares appear before him in his mind. But she probably should have known better, because this is actually completely useless against the Joker, because it turns out that the Joker's nightmares are something that he finds absolutely hilarious. Once the Titans are able to use blue kryptonite to cripple Bizarro, the entire team is able to focus on the Joker, and he does go down, but for a moment, the Joker showed that he could probably take on half of the Teen Titans. Number 8, Daredevil vs. Namor. In Daredevil number 7, which is one of the most hilarious comics I have ever read, when Daredevil came face to face with the King of Atlantis, the incredibly powerful Namor the Submariner, he was way out of his league. Namor had been guilted into trying to reclaim an area for Atlantis on the surface world, and so he went waltzing into the offices of Matt Murdock trying to go the legal route to achieve his wishes before he got frustrated and just tried to force it to happen physically. Now, this took place during a Daredevil comic, so Matt was able to hold his own for a little while, but he wasn't punching Namor or anything. He was just dodging Namor's massive blows and leading the fight into a construction site where he tried using a bulldozer to knock Namor down. All this did was make Namor more mad. Matt tries dropping rubble onto the Atlantean, who just shrugs it off and then topples the mighty machine that Daredevil was standing on. From this point, Matt actually just tries to run away, leaping onto a lamppost, and Namor just rips it out of the ground, sending Matt crashing down. In his final desperate attempt, Matt wraps Namor up in the wiring from the lamppost and tries to shock Namor into defeat, but even with Matt's insulated gloves, they both get shocked and Namor recovers way faster than Matt did, who was left crawling trying to just reach out at Namor's ankles. Now, Namor does applaud Daredevil's courage, but still, he got wrecked. Number 7, the Wasp vs. Skrulls. There is a somewhat unspoken rule for major comic book events in Marvel Comics, and that rule is that at least one major superhero has to go to the pearly gates by the end. Captain Captain America was the one in Civil War, and Thor was the one in Conclusion of Fear itself. Oh, and the Hulk did it in the Second Civil War. During the Secret Invasion run, when the Avengers faced off against the Skrulls, it was founding Avenger Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp, who snuffed it. 1 month before this event, Janet's ex-husband, Hank Pym, gifted her a new Pym particle growth serum that should be used in battle if things went south. As the heroes of Earth made their last stand against the Skrulls, Wasp used the particles, growing to an absolutely gargantuan size. But what she didn't realize was that the person who had been posing as Hank Pym was actually a Skrull named Kriti, I think is how you pronounce it. Not only that, but the growth serum that he had given her was actually a bomb that was meant to be activated in case the Skrull invasion failed. As she exploded, Thor used his enchanted hammer to control the blast, and even though he stopped the explosion from wiping out everyone else, he couldn't save Janet, and that's why humans are woefully unprepared for alien invasions. Number 6. Spider-Man vs. the Firebrand. In Amazing Spider-Man number 700.3, yes, that is how we used to number comics, it gave us one of the most horrifying Spider-Man scenes to date. The issue gets off to a start as the wall crawler takes on Firebrand, but Spidey is completely off of his game, apparently from eating too much pie at Aunt May's. That's the actual excuse he gave. Now that starts as a joke, but clearly he really was off of his game. After one too many quips pushes him over the line, Firebrand unleashes his full power, literally trying to end the life of our beloved webhead. Fair warning, the art here is not for the faint of heart. There is a close-up of Peter's face as Firebrand turns up the heat, firstly showing his Spidey costume burning away, followed by his actual skin cracking and burning. A huge explosion is then caused as the villain reaches his very limits, destroying everything around him. And somehow, Parker actually survives all of this and manages to crawl out of the rubble with his skin literally melting off of his body. There is no doubt that this would have been the end for Spider-Man if not for the swift arrival of paramedics who managed to find his body and take him away. Number 5. Red Arrow vs. Prometheus. Taking place in 2010's Cry for Justice issue number 5, during a meeting of the Justice League, Red Arrow leaves briefly to tend to his daughter and subsequently returns later with a gory stump where his arm used to be. It's actually not till a later book that we find out what actually happened in the subsequent Justice League Rise and Fall. The issue opens up with Harper finishing up a video call with his daughter, and as the call ends, Shazam walks into the room and sucker punches Roy in the back of the head. He then reveals himself as the villain Prometheus and the mastermind behind the destruction of Star City. Now while fighting Prometheus, Red Arrow is caught off guard when the villain goes down and Prometheus launches a surprise attack, sending multiple discs that wound Roy. Now in his brief moment, a final blow from the villain takes Harper's arm clean off of the rest of his body, which eventually throws Harper into a coma. The rest of the Justice League managed to stop Prometheus eventually, but for Red Arrow, the pain wasn't over because in Prometheus's attack, he ended up ending the life of Red Arrow's daughter at the same time. In at number 4 today is Everyone vs. Brother Eye. Beginning 35 years into the future, DC Comics' Future's End depicts a world in which Brother Eye transformed almost all the superheroes into cyborg bugs. It's actually pretty horrifying, like body horror, it's scary. With only a small resistance left, Bruce Wayne created a time machine to prevent Brother Eye's rule from ever occurring. Now although Bruce was unable to travel back in time himself, the new Batman, Terry McGinnis, took his place. Unfortunately, Terry only traveled 30 years into the past, arriving 5 years too late. So in this not too distant future, Brother Eye's ascension was already underway, with Mr. Terrific working on the technology that would enhance Brother Eye's power. Terry teamed up with Tim Drake, who came out of retirement, to stop Brother Eye's technological apocalypse from happening. Unfortunately, Terry accidentally sped up the process and ultimately sacrificed himself in the battle with Brother Eye. Tim then took Terry's batsuit, traveling back in time 5 years, preventing the arrival of the heroes from Earth 2, and then when Tim went back 35 years into the future, stick with me here, he was shocked to learn that nothing had changed at all. Humanity was still controlled by Brother Eye's technology. Determined to fight Brother Eye, Tim became the next Batman, and this storyline continued in a new Batman Beyond series where Tim led a resistance against Brother Eye. Number 3. Spider-Man vs. Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom and Spider-Man do not fight in the same weight class at all. However, in their first ever encounter, Spider-Man did actually manage to get the better of Dr. Doom, and that may have stung Dr. Doom pretty bad. So, in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 349 to 350, when he came back, it did not go well for Spider-Man. This time, Spidey was tracking an elderly jewel thief named the Black Fox, who had stolen the priceless Trask diamond. Black Fox also happened to barter one of Victor Von Doom's family heirlooms, an emerald passed down to him by his late mother, who means a lot to him. So, once Doom became aware of this transgression, he flew to New York and caught up with the Black Fox at the same time that Spider-Man did. When Spidey intervened on the Black Fox's behalf to stop Dr. Doom from actually taking his life, Dr. Doom did not hold back against Spider-Man. Doom nonchalantly thrashed the web-slinger, leaving him with his costume in tatters and desperately scrambling away for his life. While he convinced Doom to allow him to retrieve his family heirloom, Peter's severe beating had left him concussed, so much so that he even hallucinated Uncle Ben. The beating he took taught Spidey an important lesson about recognizing his limits, which is Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom is his limit. Number 2, Ghost Rider versus symbiotes. At one point, both Venom and Ghost Rider were part of the Thunderbolts team, and being a team of pretty morally gray characters and villains, it was literally only a matter of time until things got ugly. In Thunderbolts number 23, Ghost Rider and Venom came into conflict. Venom exposed his host at the time, stopping the Ghost Rider from using his Hellfire to accidentally take the life of the human host. So, instead, Ghost Rider used his penance stare on the symbiote. This is when we learned that Venom is actually resistant to the penance stare, as Ghost Rider was overwhelmed by how much sin that the Venom symbiote had actually done over the years. Now, I don't really understand this, as those are literally the things that the penance stare is supposed to manipulate and use against its victim, but there is proof that this may just be a symbiote power. There was an instance during a crossover between Ghost Rider, Blaze, Spirits of Vengeance, and Web of Spider-Man that revealed that there was a problem between Ghost Rider's penance stare and the symbiote's, period, since they are not from this planet. Again, I don't know how that works, but that's just how it works. It's a comic book. I don't know, have fun with it. And finally, in at number 1 today is Iron Man v Venom. Coming to us in the 302nd issue of Iron Man, after Stark Industries was falsely implicated in a scandal, society was under the impression that its CEO, Tony Stark, was exploiting the poor for his own ends. Now, this was at a time that Venom was beginning to see himself as a guardian of the innocent, a lethal protector, if you will. So, in retaliation, he tracked Tony Stark down and bit his head clean off. Just kidding. Thankfully, this Tony Stark was actually a life model decoy that Tony was controlling remotely. Now, Venom knew pretty quick where he would find the real Tony and made his way to Tony's penthouse. Running for his life, Tony headed to the armory, keeping just out of reach of Venom, knowing he couldn't possibly survive a direct encounter with the alien without his Iron Man suit. As Tony darted through his home, Venom turned the building into Swiss cheese, pulling off walls and tearing open elevators, trying to rip Tony apart. Now, Tony managed to get to the armory and don his costume, and instead of blasting Venom to a pulp, Iron Man reasoned with him, telling Venom that Stark was innocent and that he will prove it in time. Venom agreed to back off, but he threatened to come back. Number 10, the Hulk versus Horfin. Loki, the god of mischief, very famously has a very large wolf for a son, named Fenris, or Fenrir, however you want to pronounce it. That wolf is absolutely diabolically powerful. As such, his own offspring are also pretty powerful. But specifically, we're talking about the Lycan known as Horfin. Now, on the other hand of this discussion, the Hulk is quite strong as well. We have seen him team up with Asgardians from time to time, being one of the only Midgard heroes to be able to do so. We have seen a giant wolf face the Hulk in the MCU, and that was awesome. But when the Hulk was helping out some of the Norse pantheon in Incredible Hulk number 422, he faced Horfin, and it did not go well. Horfin ate both the Hulk and the Asgardian volley, with gamma green fluids coating his teeth and lips. This comes right at the end of the issue, and it ends off with the comic saying, hilariously I might add, and then ... they died. Now, luckily in the next issue, the two wake up in the realm of the goddess of death, Hela, and she eventually resurrects the two inside Horfin's stomach so that they could smash their way back out. But I've honestly never seen the Hulk lose like that before. It was kind of crazy. Number 9, Superman vs. Deathstroke. Knowing who Superman is, we are all pretty aware that not a lot of people can beat him, and those that have are almost all supremely powerful. But some of them are just clever. For example, Deathstroke. There have been a few times that these two have come to blows, usually ending in a draw, surprisingly enough, but one of my favorite Deathstroke and Superman matchups occurred during the New 52 era in Deathstroke number 9. The issue featured a surprising team-up between Slade Wilson and Wonder Woman as the duo battled against a Titan and his mythical army on Themyscira. Now, Deathstroke had acquired the legendary God Killer sword, and swore to use it to vanquish Lepidus, which is the Titan, once and for all, when Superman unexpectedly arrived in response to all the commotion. Now, being a big old suck and assuming Deathstroke was responsible for all the mayhem, Superman sought to take him down before being parried and surprised by a massive swing from the God Killer sword, with Deathstroke using the flat end of the blade to completely floor the Man of Steel due to his weakness to magic. The sword helps Slade to even hold the Man of Steel for a short period of time, but eventually Supes uses his speed to get his hands on Deathstroke before Wonder Woman breaks up the fight, making this all a bit of a draw, but still. Number 8, Mysterio vs. Wolverine. The post-apocalyptic world featured in the Old Man Logan story came to be when the villains decided that instead of fighting their usual villains, who they always lose to, they would instead put themselves up against whatever hero they were actually best suited to face. Basically, I could talk about all the villains for this entire list, but I'm not going to do that. In the case of Wolverine, that happened to be Mysterio. Now, Mysterio is a master of creating illusions that trick even the senses, and he is almost always defeated by Spider-Man because of his spider sense. But for Logan, his super sensors are one of his key traits, so when Mysterio uses his illusions to trick those senses into believing that the X-Mansion was being attacked by Doc Ock, Ulysses Claw, Strife, and a whole squad of powerful villains, Wolverine held nothing back. Using his claws, he cut through the villains like butter. With all the other X-Men nowhere to be found, it was Wolverine versus everyone, and he was taking all of those villains to the grave. When he finally took down the last one, Bullseye, the illusion was lifted to reveal that these villains were in actuality his fellow X-Men, who were just caught completely off guard by the sudden attack from one of their own. Number 7, Blue Beetle vs. Giganta. Blue Beetle. Beetle is in the name, so you'd think that he'd be pretty aware that villains who can grow to massive size can give him some issues. But I don't think any of us realized how much of an issue it would actually cause for young, inexperienced Jaime Reyes. In the 19th issue of the 2006 run of Blue Beetle, Ladama, Jaime's crime boss rival and the aunt to one of his best friends, is being attacked by the Wonder Woman villain known as Giganta. As she smashes Ladama's house and chases her through the streets, Blue Beetle is doing everything he can think of to try and keep Ladama alive and also stop Giganta, but everything he tries to bring her down just bounces right off of her. He is trying to subdue her like she's a normal woman. Now, luckily, Jaime is being trained by Peacemaker at this point in time, and he, alongside some called-in advice, lets Jaime in on a little secret. Humans becoming giant requires them to magically enhance their bodies so that it can handle the strain of being that large without collapsing into a pile of broken bones and goo. The fight took a turn when Jaime took Peacemaker's lesson to heart about the subtleties of the human body, and he finally figured out how to use Giganta's size against her, but it took a hell of a long time. Number 6, Batman vs. Reverse Flash. Right at the very beginning of The Flash, the Button, which is part of the crossover between The Flash and Batman and the prelude to Doomsday Clock the Button, the Reverse Flash ends up in the Batcave. Now, Batman has taken on metahumans quite a bit, but of all the villains out there, it's probably Superman's and the Flash's villains that most other heroes are going to have a hard time with. Eobard Thawne has been able to move faster than the Flash himself, and he has pulled the wool over Barry Allen in some big ways. So Eobard against Batman, it's a real interesting fight, if not a very one-sided fight. Batman had just hung up the phone with Barry when Eobard showed up, and in the minute that Barry said he would take to get there, Reverse Flash beats Batman purple and rips up a note written for him by Flashpoint Batman, aka Thomas Wayne, his dad. After that, Batman is able to get in a few licks after plunging a batarang right through Eobard's foot, but that only results in another beating from the Reverse Flash. Batman just barely survives the fight with the evil speedster. Number 5. Hulk vs. Doc Ock. Now this one is kind of crazy. You'd think that the Hulk would wipe the floor with Doc Ock. When the Hulk and Spider-Man fought, Hulk only lost because Spidey gained some cosmic empowerment, but for Otto Octavius, all he needed was a spiffy new set of adamantium arms. So way back in the day, Dr. Octopus happened to get his hands on some adamantium octopus arms, and they were put out of commission and weirdly forgot about for a very long time, until they made a spectacular proper return in Spider-Man 1990 issue 18 and 19. This is the Revenge of the Sinister Six arc, and not only does Otto manage to make quick work of the entire Sinister Six to take control, even turning the Sandman into glass, he also defeats Spider-Man, throwing him miles away from the fight, but then he gets his hands on Professor Hulk with these new spiffy arms. And not only does he completely lift Hulk into the air, he then beats the guy up so bad that he gets knocked unconscious. Number 4. Hulk vs. Thanos. Now, I'll admit, this moment kind of annoys me in retrospect, and that's just because it was the whole reason that Bruce Banner's Hulk doesn't get to really show up for any of the MCU's Avengers Infinity War or Avengers Endgame, which is a damn shame. The Hulk is the strongest there is, or at least he usually thinks he is. The Hulk's raw power makes for some truly crazy and satisfying scenes, especially in the MCU. People in the theaters of Avengers Infinity War were pumped to see the Hulk face Thanos. Comic book fans, however, are well aware that Thanos can defeat the Hulk, but the way he does it in Infinity War, man. After letting the Hulk get in maybe like a few punches, Thanos displays his superior strength as he pulls Hulk's hands back off of his shoulders, and then a little quick tester jab to the shoulder gets the Hulk stumbling back. After a quick little sizing up, Thanos not only blocks or redirects every single swing the Hulk throws, but he continuously pummels the Hulk, throwing jab after jab and even getting in a good knee to the face, leaving the Hulk delirious before Thanos lifts the massive green Goliath over his head and slams him full force into the ground. It basically neuters the Hulk from being able to manifest from Banner going forward, which eventually leads to Professor Hulk. Number 3. Superman vs. Doomsday. Doomsday does not speak. He can't be reasoned with, and the only way to get him to stop is to beat him harder than he will beat you. That's because Doomsday was created on the planet Krypton as the ultimate life form, tested against that planet's harsh environment and eventually against the Kryptonians themselves. So, when he first ever appeared, he was the perfect match to face off against Superman, and he did a spectacular job. Superman didn't properly stand a chance against this guy. The Justice League and Superman attempted to stop the monster from reaching Metropolis, but even their combined might couldn't effectively slow the creature down, with the hero Booster Gold giving the creature its name after being brutally defeated by it. Vowing to stop the villain at all costs, Superman fought Doomsday alone and hand-to-hand in the streets of Metropolis, each of them mortally wounding one another while the shocked world just watched on in disbelief. Relieved that the monster had been finally defeated once and for all, or at least it seemed that way, Superman passed away in Lois's arms in Superman number 75, which became a hugely popular story for that very reason. In at number 2 today, it's General Zod versus Captain Boomerang. Okay, now to preface this, Captain Boomerang is not a hero, except for when he is part of Task Force X, aka the Suicide Squad. And even then, it's tough to call any of them a hero. But regardless of that, Captain Boomerang is not the guy you would put up against a Kryptonian. In 2016's Suicide Squad, in the second issue, Task Force X are sent on a mission to Russia to retrieve or destroy an unknown device. Turns out that device is actually a portal to the Phantom Zone. Rather than leave that thing be, Captain Boomerang waltzes on up to the portal and is literally incinerated down to his ankles instantly by none other than General Zod, who was trapped inside. I doubt the Boomerang guy would have been able to help much in the squad's fight against Zod. It's honestly a miracle that any of them survived, with Katana being the main one able to actually do some damage. It was kinda nuts. And finally, in at number 1 today, Wolverine versus Magneto. In the 1993 crossover event Fatal Attractions, Magneto was offering mutants sanctuary on his ship, the Avalon, and recovering from the legacy virus, he was planning to completely wipe out humanity, being opposed by the X-Men. Now Xavier, in a special Shi'ar suit, leads the fight against Magneto on Avalon, and Magneto holds everyone off until Wolverine gets the drop on him. Now, I should say, Wolverine versus Magneto is the stupidest fight ever. It doesn't even make sense. Wolverine, he has metal on his skeleton. Wolverine makes it so close to him, slicing him across the chest just a little bit too close for Magneto's comfort, and that pushes Magneto over the edge. He basically turns the adamantium on Wolverine's skeleton into liquid and quite literally pulls it out of his body. This got Magneto brought down quick by Xavier. It led to the rise of Onslaught, that huge massive villain. It revealed that Wolverine's claws are actually bone, and it turned Wolverine into a completely feral version of himself with no nose, which is weird. In at number 10 is Bucky. Because this one is so obvious that I feel like I'm cheating by using it, it's going all the way at the top. But look, everyone thought that Captain America's #1 guy, Bucky Barnes, was long gone. All the way back near the end of World War II, Bucky's body was never found after he had gotten himself stuck to an experimental plane that then exploded. Pretty surefire way to come to an end. That was in Avengers #4 from 1964. Now, fast forward all the way to Captain America Volume 5, number 11 from 2005, and turns out that Bucky was not gone at all. Well, his arm was, but the rest of him had fallen into a very cold river and become preserved in ice like Captain America, which actually makes no sense because I swear Cap only survived that because of his serum, but whatever. Bucky was then recovered by the Soviets and they outfitted him with a new arm and some extremely serious brainwashing. Bucky became one of the most deadly assassins for the Soviet Union and was sent around the world to take out the highest of priority targets, leaving almost no trace. He was also the one to train the Black Widow Ops program. The revelation that Buck was still alive was a huge one for Captain America, and as most of you know, this made it all the way into the MCU, so it was obviously a good story to tell. In at number 9 is Judgment. There's nothing like having your whole existence judged by a massive, ancient, all-powerful Celestial and having almost no way to stop it. In the extremely recent Judgment event, in the wake of a very catastrophic war between the mutants and the Eternals, the Avengers revived the progenitor Celestial to put an end to the conflict. Only, the Celestial is like, no, you guys are actually the worst, and now I'm going to judge your entire species one person at a time to decide if it's worth it to let you all live. And they can do absolutely nothing to stop that. Like, they even believe that they have found a solution, only for the Celestial to pull the rug out from under them and reveal that the whole thing was an illusion that it created by itself. And he judges them even harsher for doing that. What's interesting is that the Celestial judges a lot of heroes in a way you may not expect. Now, I don't want to give spoilers for the comic, so definitely check it out if you haven't already, but characters like Jean Grey, Captain America, and Cyclops all have their entire comic history judged by the Celestial, and it's super interesting. Also, the Celestial's judgment of Doctor Doom is probably one of the most subtle great Doom moments in comic books. You gotta check it out. But in at number 8 is Secret Empire. Marvel's Secret Empire should just be, this is all the things that heroes thought about Captain America, and they were completely wrong about all of them. That's what they should just title this comic book. For example, near the beginning of the whole thing, Captain America orders the death of Rick Jones. Not a single hero expected him to actually do that. I mean, to be honest, no one expected Captain America to be not just a Hydra sleeper agent, but Hydra supreme leader either. But I think the hero who got things really wrong in the worst way about the man he looked up to, surprisingly, would be Deadpool. One of Deadpool's biggest heroes is Captain America. He grew up idolizing him, and when Cap let him join the Avengers, it was a big deal to the guy. So he knew that whatever Cap would ask him to do would be for the best. That includes taking down other major allies like Agent Phil Coulson. Hydra Cap put Deadpool on the very important mission to take out Coulson, and because of Deadpool's faith in the Cap, he followed the order. As you can imagine, it was not a good time when he found out how wrong he was to do so. Number 7, the Illuminati and the Hulk. Look, there is a whole hell of a lot that the Illuminati has gotten wrong. They're a group of men representing some of the most powerful groups and nations in the Marvel world, and they all have drastically different points of view and are all drastically full of themselves and incredibly narcissistic. So I'm going to talk about some of the biggest mess ups they are responsible for, starting with what they did to the Hulk. After the Jade Giant destroyed Las Vegas, Iron Man and the Illuminati had to come up with a hard solution to the problem of the Hulk. He's just too big of a threat to the human population, and that's honestly fair. Some stories say that the Hulk supposedly has never taken the life of an innocent person when he was on one of his rampages, which 1 sounds like a complete lie, but 2 is proven to be untrue in this story, as during his rampage in Las Vegas he accidentally took the lives of 26 people and a dog. The Hulk is a threat, but he's also a friend, so I'm sure that the fix the Illuminati came up with of blasting Bruce Banner into space towards an uninhabited planet seemed like a really good one. The Illuminati teammates all agreed except for Namor, and they sent him off to land on an uninhabited peaceful planet. Only, that's not what happened at all, and they put him through probably the worst emotional pain he's ever been through, and he came back with the most amount of rage anyone had seen out of the Hulk up to that point, and it was directed to each member of the Illuminati. Good job guys, you messed up. But in at number 6, it's the Illuminati and the Skrulls. Now onto the second Illuminati mess up. Pretty quickly after the Illuminati's formation, the Avengers found themselves caught between the warring Skrull and Kree empires. That's not exactly a conflict you want to involve yourself in if you can help it, but alas, the Illuminati are way less intelligent than you'd expect. When the dust settled, the members of the Illuminati wanted to send a message directly to the Skrulls along the lines of, "Leave and never come back because we are super strong and will destroy you." How did they deliver that message? In the form of a small raid on the already defeated Skrulls on their throne world. And what do you know, it didn't go as smoothly as planned. They were pretty promptly captured, studied, and experimented on by the shape-changing Skrulls. Seems like there is a negative to going behind the backs of all your insanely powerful friends and doing incredibly shady stuff without telling one. Who would have thought? Alas, this was the reason the whole secret invasion happened, where the Skrulls literally infiltrated the Earth, swapping out heroes with Skrull sleeper agents. Again, good job guys. But in at number 5, who would have thought, it's the Illuminati again with the Infinity Gems. Another of the Illuminati's shortcomings came when they thought they could keep the astronomically powerful Infinity Gems protected by keeping all of them on the same planet, Earth, this planet. However, Mr. Fantastic, being probably the most intelligent of the group, thought he had figured out the perfect way to destroy the incredibly dangerous Infinity Gems once and for all. With the help of the Illuminati, Reed Richards gathered all 6 gems together and tried to use their combined power to erase them from existence, kind of like how Thanos did that in Avengers Endgame, just minus the whole crispy arm thing. While Mr. Fantastic's arm was spared, the plan totally backfired and forced Richards to reconsider his options. He gave the members of the Illuminati 1 gem each to protect and hide, but that decision to have these cosmically powerful gems, some of the strongest objects in the universe, all relatively close to each other, just made them easier for the relatively lame villain the Hood to steal them. At which point Tony Stark lied to everyone again and the Illuminati dispersed the gems among each other yet again. The thick-headedness of these guys, I am telling you, it's just the worst. But off the Illuminati and into number 4 is Tower of Babel. Batman is a planner. That's why the amount of prep time he is given is a major point to cover when talking about whether or not he can take on another character. So yeah, he is a master strategist and tactician, but do you know what Batman is really freaking bad at? Communication. I think most of his interpersonal problems can be attributed to the fact that Batman sucks with people, but it became an absolutely massive problem when it came to the Tower of Babel storyline. You see, Batman had come up with contingency plans for all his fellow Justice League members, just in case any one of them or all of them are corrupted, become mind controlled, or turn evil. And do you know how many times that has happened? A lot! So that makes sense. He's not wrong for doing that. And as an added bonus, all of his plans were to detain and incapacitate. But Bats didn't tell any of them about the fact that he had these plans. His need to be in control and the lack of trust he had in his teammates led directly to Ra's al Ghul stealing his plans, altering them to be deadly, and bringing the League to its knees. If he had just been able to communicate that these totally reasonable plans existed, I think that simple statement could have saved a world of headaches, not to mention the League wouldn't have nearly been as mad at him after the fact. But no, he's gotta be all brooding and edgy and annoying. And at number 3 is Professor X. Man, honestly, Professor X is a huge jerk. He has done a whole slew of questionable things that we could all deem as wrong. He used his abilities to cheat in school, which yeah, I would do that too, but he also consistently recruits young adults, most of whom have no other home to go and fight for his cause. And he even uses his powers to manipulate them into doing so on multiple occasions. methods. He's faked his own passing to his own students and didn't even apologize when he came back. He tampered with Jean Grey's mind instead of teaching her, which arguably resulted in the Dark Phoenix. He erased Wolverine's memory and implanted new memories when they first met. He erased the memory of Vulcan from his younger brother's minds to cover his own butt. He was a horrible dad and even pulled a Tower of Babel all of his own with the X-Men by creating the Xavier protocols, which fell into the wrong hands. But the biggest oopsie from Xavier was when he used his powers to put Magneto into a coma, which somehow bonded Xavier and Magneto into a singular being called Onslaught, who had both of their abilities and the knowledge to gain even more power. This being spelled out the end of the line for countless heroes from the Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and everyone in between. Now sure, the problem was solved thanks to some reality warping, and he couldn't have known this would happen, but because of his other sins as well, screw this guy. In at number 2, saving your mom. Not your mom. You know what I'm saying. Now, because we are dealing with heroes for this list, on most of these occasions the heroes did have the best of intentions, but as Sam Neill as Dr. Grant in Jurassic Park 3 says, some of the worst things imaginable have been done with the best of intentions. Now I'm sure Dr. Grant was not talking about Barry Allen the Flash using the Speed Force to go back in time and prevent the death of his mother, inadvertently causing a timeline where he has no powers, the Amazonians and the Atlanteans are in a massive war that destroyed the UK, Bruce Wayne lost his life and Thomas Wayne became a very aggressive Batman, Superman was captured and held in an underground facility for his whole life, the Justice League never formed, and Cyborg is the world's premier superhero. Probably wasn't talking about that. Obviously, we can all understand why Barry wanted to do this. I would probably have done the same thing. I love my mom. But for a hero who is in possession of powers that can alter time, he should be way more responsible with that power. Has he never read a Spider-Man comic? Also, he paved a way for DC to give us the New 52, and whether you loved it or hated it, that was a big old mess all of its own. And in at number 1, John Stewart blows up planet Xanshi. John Stewart is one of the cooler Green Lanterns, I'll give him that. Definitely a lot of people's favorite. Doesn't mean he can't have moments of utter stupidity though, and man, the one he had was a doozy. So basically, in Cosmic Odyssey Volume 1, Number 2, John Stewart and John Johns, Martian Manhunter, are sent to a planet called Xanshi, where the anti-life aspect had set a plague among the inhabitants. After Stewart easily makes a cure for the virus in like 2 panels, the pair fly off to an Arctic weather station because of the amount of energy it's sapping. They travel all the way to the station, with Stewart constantly underestimating the aspect and the things that has been throwing at the 2 heroes. He's actually a huge jerk about it honestly, acting like it's all nothing to the power of the Green Lanterns. Then, out of nowhere, Stewart says, "Looks like things are gonna get rougher from here on in. Sorry, John." And this cocky son of a gun traps Martian Manhunter in a bubble and says that Manhunter is out of his league here and will only slow Stewart down. Manhunter's even like, "You may yet need me," and this guy is like, kinda doubt that, and then he flies off to seize the day, monologuing about how powerful his ring is and nothing can stop it. Turns out, the Aspect has set up a massive world-destroying device, and you know what else? He painted the whole thing yellow. Now in case you do not know, Green Lantern power rings cannot affect anything that is the color yellow. And you bet that puppy goes off and literally annihilates half of the planet, boiling the seas and engulfing it in flame. Then the inside of the planet explodes as well, causing the whole thing to go way out of its orbit and then go careening into its own sun. Now look, I've messed up before. A lot of heroes have messed up before, but not a lot of those heroes have messed up like this. Good golf.
Number 10, lied. Now, this isn't always entirely Homelander's fault in the streaming series, except for when, you know, it is. Homelander makes a lot of public speeches in the show, and in almost every single one, he's trying to sway the public to be on his and Vought's side, and as such is lying through his teeth. Now, Vought is also equally responsible for doing this, of course. Both Madeline Stillwell and Seth Edgar, as well as all of Vought as a company, are just as responsible for lying en masse to the public and keeping secrets. So at least Homelander isn't alone in this terrible thing, but then again, sometimes his lies make things even worse, not just for the company, but for innocent people. These lies also aren't always just bad because the public has eaten them up, but Homelander also has a habit of lying and reading the room so poorly at times that he actually gets himself in trouble with his own words and actions. In fact, making the public angry with him and risking him exploding at them. It's very tense to watch sometimes. Like that moment in season 2 where we see Homelander contemplate kind of throwing his entire reputation out the window. He's like, I could listen to you or I could kill everyone. What should I do? Number 9. Expressed himself. At the end of season 2 of The Boys Amazon Prime show, we're treated to a scene that apparently was actually meant for season 1, but ended up on the cutting room floor for that season. Thankfully, we got it in season 2. Woohoo! It shows Homelander taking some me time. He stands on the roof of what appears to be Vought Tower looking down at the night-lit city, as he treats himself to some very intimate me time. He grunts out, I can do whatever the fuck I want. And then we see that he is pantless, and it is implied that he expressed himself all over the city. You know, sometimes you just need to express yourself, but you know, ideally not all over the city. Very rude. Now before we move on to this next point, if you're enjoying this video, be sure to show us by giving this video a like and smashing that subscribe button if you haven't already. It truly does help us out, and thank you so much for all of your support. Number 8. Queen Maeve. The whole relationship that Homelander has with Queen Maeve is pretty messed up. And this goes for both the show and the comics. In the comics, the two are in a relationship that is intensely one-sided. Maeve is actually in love with Homelander, but he doesn't really care at all about her. At one point, he tricks her into sleeping with Black Noir, which is a huge part of the reason that Maeve herself becomes so callous and cold-hearted. In the show, he terrifies her to the point that she feels it is unsafe to share her relationship with Elena. Homelander is extremely controlling, which almost always leaves Maeve feeling too terrified to ever stand up to him in the Amazon Prime series. Almost anyways. Number 7. Ryan. Not only does Homelander come in and try to basically hijack his son, Ryan, for himself, attempting to steal him away from Becca and make him come over to his side of thinking in season 2 of The Boys, but he also pressures his son to be more like him, to the point that he pushes him off of a roof to prove to Ryan that he does in fact have superpowers like his old man. He encourages Ryan to take that leap of faith, ensuring him that if he jumps off, he'll fly. At this point, Homelander doesn't really know for sure that Ryan even has superpowers, as they have yet to manifest, and yet he still pushes Ryan off the roof, hoping to unlock his son's potential. Yeah, he just pushes him off the roof. Ryan, of course, just falls. He does not fly. Fortunately, he is super durable, and we later learn, yes, he does have powers, so he ends up being okay. But what would Homelander have done if he killed his son? If he didn't end up having superpowers? Probably just fly away and not even dwell on it. Ryan probably wouldn't be worthy of being his son if he hadn't demonstrated his heat vision powers later on. He'd be like, I don't really care, he didn't even have powers. Number 6. Makeout session. In season 2, Homelander finds himself with a new superhero girlfriend. The two of them both seem to see all the other criminals and even just regular humans the same, as nothing more than pestilent ants. They both have no value for human life, and during a makeout session that starts when they are both apprehending a criminal, crush said criminal's head with sheer force in the heat of the moment. Ew. Then they make out in it, and I'm like, ah! So gross. Number 5. Stormfront. Speaking of Homelander's lucky lady, his girlfriend was actually Stormfront. In the comics, Stormfront is the leader of a different group of supes, sort of the B-listers to the Seven's A-listers. Stormfront's also a man, and also a former World War II German soldier, who still patiently worships his former leader, Hitler, as though one day he'll somehow return to power. In the show, Stormfront is quite similar to her comic book counterpart, but she uses social media as a mask and as a means of propaganda to gain support, hoping to amass an army she can utilize for her true, much more sinister purpose. Also, she's a woman, so there's that. Homelander doesn't just date her, but he actually stands by her side after learning of her truly alarming origin. Even knowing who she is and what she believes in, he introduces her to his son and fights at her side. Yikes. Although at least he's a little bit like, I feel a little weird about it. Even for me, this is a lot. Number 4. Flight 37. The tragedy of this flight is one that could have easily been prevented in most comic books. But when it comes to the world of the Amazon Prime series The Boys, things don't end up as happily for those aboard Flight 37. This fate of the crew and passengers ends up being a crash landing and death into the ocean. Well, actually, is it into the ocean? No, I actually think they land on land, but they're flying over the ocean. The fate of the crew and passengers ends up being a crash landing and complete death. Homelander and Queen Maeve arrive in time to stop the terrorists aboard the plane, but the pilots are killed before they can ensure their safety, which prompts Homelander to abandon ship, or in this case, abandon plane. Especially as I'm pretty sure he lasered the actual controls, which is not helpful with his heat vision. It's not good, Homelander, you need to contain that. Homelander then abandons the plane with no parachute required, because he can fly. Queen Maeve insists that they stay and try to help whomever they can, carrying them out. But instead, Homelander pressures Maeve into actually abandoning the plane with him, insisting if they only save a few, then the mission would be considered a failure and a great tragedy. Instead, he orders Maeve to leave with him and tell the press that they actually didn't get there in time to help push for support for a bill that would get Supes in with the government and military, which they claim would, help increase their response times. It wouldn't, because they got there in time, they just didn't care. Number 3. Supervillains. Let's not forget that Homelander was also basically the mastermind behind creating super terrorists in the season 1 of the Amazon Prime show, which is pretty terrible. He was the one responsible for leaking Compound V and putting it in the hands of those he knew would want to strike back at the USA. Doing so caused a mass amount of death and destruction, but gave the Vought Supes an even greater excuse for needing to exist and gave them more justification in their campaign towards a bigger position of power when it came to the government. Not only was he attempting to help Vought, a pretty evil corporation, but he also made a big mess of it. He also would not let the term supervillain go, no matter what various focus groups thought of it, in comparison to super terrorist, which Ashley said actually rated much better. But that's how petty he is. He's like, no, it's gotta be supervillains. Number 2. The Vice President. In the comics, Homelander at one point gets together a group of supers who take on the government. When they arrive there, Homelander heads to the White House and kills the Vice President of the United States, Victor E. Newman. You might recognize that name if you're watching the show, who was in the comics the former CEO of Vought. He kills him by decapitating him. He also then defiles his decapitated head. Why does he do this? Mostly because he wanted to prove a point and, well, just because he wanted to. That's one of the things that makes Homelander so awful. He just feels entitled to do whatever the heck he wants because he's so powerful, which makes him pretty much one of the worst supes in the comics, if not the absolute worst. I think in the comics Homelander is the absolute worst. Number 1. His biggest fans. With Flight 37, at least you could try to argue that Homelander felt it wasn't worth saving anyone because, he felt he couldn't save them all. Although it could be argued that he probably could have saved them all by just carrying the plane to safety, which is what some other comic book heroes from Marvel or DC would likely have done. But let's try to just give him the benefit of the doubt for that one and somehow say it was impossible for him to save all of them. If that is the case, then this instance is much worse, because he killed these people intentionally and for no real greater reason other than he just wanted to. At the Believe Expo, Homelander's biggest fans are a family who managed to win a car as well as dinner with Homelander. Homelander decides to fly them around in the car, effortlessly holding it up as he soars through the sky. The family eventually is freezing and is terrified, but tries to pretend, like everything's fine, this is good, we're with our favorite superhero. Homelander is just flying them to dinner, they think, and will be there soon, but Homelander reveals that he doesn't care about the Believe Expo, or the family, or their religion, and that basically this whole thing is a sham. He tells them what he thinks of their beliefs and goes on to say, you may as well have burned your money in regards to the expo costs. And in regards to God, goes on to say, the only man in the sky is me, before letting go of the car and letting it plummet back to Earth and the family to their doom. To Homelander, that would not be a plane, that would be him in the sky. Apparently, since he's the only one.